My name is Paula Fiebich. I am the watercolor instructor here at Anton Art Center, and I teach beginning watercolor classes, intermediate watercolor classes, and also something new that we developed this year is pen and ink with watercolor. All classes have been very successful. I am a member of the National Watercolor Society, the American Watercolor Society, and I am signature members of both. I currently am also on the board for the National Watercolor Society, and I am there as a director of development. The title of this one is The Bishop, and it was in a show in Shenzhen, China. The one in back of me is the Hotel du Paris that was done from an inspiration in Monaco, and that made it into a show in Belgium. The dragon painting that's in back of me is called the Pearl River Mart, and that was inspiration from Asian market I saw in Soho in New York City. And this last one is from a patisserie in the Marais area of Paris. Most people do feel that watercolor is a very difficult medium to work with, but I have had great success with the classes here and with the students. They have enjoyed it thoroughly, and they have really grown from learning from watercolor. So if you are interested in joining me, please contact the Anton Art Center and go paint with me. What I'm going to demonstrate a little bit of how I get started with the watercolor painting is I'm basically going to take the painting I did of the Pearl River Mart that's in back of me with the dragon, the paper dragon, and I'm going to just demonstrate how I developed doing and painting the paper dragon. To begin with, the first thing that we do is there are several different kinds of watercolor paper you can use. There's hot press, cold press, and rough. I generally work, depending on the subject matter, I generally work with cold press. And the first thing you do is, like what I've done here, is I have taken transfer paper, and I sometimes can take like the image that I have here. This is my reference that I'm looking at on a smaller version of the painting that I have right in front of me. And I can make a copy of that and then sketch that out and trace it onto my watercolor paper, which I have here. Now, if you notice, in this dragon, what I'm going to paint first is this whole tail area right here of the dragon. And you will see there's some little highlighted, little sparkly little spots on here. Well, in order to maintain those little white little spot areas, you use a masking agent. And it's like a liquid mask. And if you can see it on here, I've already have applied and let it dry some little points that I want to preserve the white of the paper, so that I'm going to paint all over this, but that will preserve the little white areas. And then when I am done painting an area, I can take and I can rub that cement or the masking off rather, and it will maintain the little highlights that I want. To kind of show you how I even applied these little spots is, and this is a technique that I've learned, I actually take one of these pens that is actually used for inking, and I find that the tip of this, and when you dip it into the liquid masking agent, all I had to do was to go in and I could just put these little areas of the masking all over, and it makes it clean, it makes a nice little spot and everything. And this comes in handy, plus because it's metal, it's easy to clean. So to begin, I'm going to, and as you can see, I am left-handed. So when you're left-handed, I have a tendency to put all my paints and everything to the left-hand side, so I'm not reaching over to this side and possibly dripping any watercolor onto the paper. So it just ends up working out real well on this side. So I'm going to start to just, when you do watercolor, you work from light to dark generally, and you kind of build up your layers of color. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick out, this is sort of like a green gold color, and that's the base color of the dragon. And I'm adding a little bit of yellow to it, cadmium yellow, to kind of lighten it up a little bit, to kind of follow a little bit of the color that's on there. And I've got a number 8 brush. Okay, so I'm going to start, and I'm looking at my reference as I go, and I'm going to start up here in this corner. I'm just going to lay in some of this paint, just following, and I'm going right through to the little spikes that are on him, and I'm just carving it all in the color, and I'm putting in a base color right here. And I'm just kind of following this all around, and this color can be brought and as you can see, it's going to be just a light color for now. One thing to always keep in mind when you're working with watercolor, that when you apply it and it's wet, it looks darker. When it dries, it's going to dry lighter. So if you think that you are happy with the color you're applying, you will see that it's going to dry a little bit lighter. So sometimes, and it's a lot of artists just starting out a little bit too timid to really put a nice rich color down because they're afraid, ooh, that's too dark. But just remember, it always dries lighter. And as you can see, I'm painting right over the little dotted areas that I want to mask. So I'm just going through. I'm putting in the space color. But I do want to say that different manufacturers, you can get an 8 from one manufacturer, you can get an 8 from another, and it could be larger or smaller. So I just kind of use whatever I feel is adequate for what I'm working on. Now, one thing I can mention about this whole process is that you can be doing this for many, many years. And, you know, be doing watercolor at a certain level and everything, and you continue. All of a sudden, you're going to have that one painting that all of a sudden you're going to look at and you're going to say, wow, did I do that? All of a sudden, it's like you turn a corner. It's a real funny process, and it's like, and that comes just from years of working and working and working. It's like with anything you take up. And it's suddenly, like all of a sudden, it's like, wow. You know, it takes a whole different, takes it to a whole different level. And then from there, it just kind of continues to grow and to develop. And not every painting is going to be a winner, even at this level. There are some duds, and I've worked on, as you can see, these very large paintings. This is one thing about watercolor. You can't cover up your mistakes with oil paint or acrylic. It's there. Now, there are little tricks of the trade to kind of help you out, but you can get painting almost done, and this is where it takes, you know, the next step of making sure there's not one little corner that's off as compared to the whole painting. Because when you get to the level of starting to enter these shows, those paintings are scrutinized, and you've got to be good. And they look at several different things. They look at the subject matter, the technical expertise that it's done in, and sometimes if it's really an innovative, something they've never seen before is what they're really impressed with. And there's just a lot of things that go into it. So it's been an interesting journey to be involved with these watercolor people. And then as you get exposed to more and more, to the really good stuff that's out there, it helps you grow as an artist. It raises the bar for you, and you keep kind of striving for that next level. And like I said, with anything, that takes some work, but it's something if you love to do it. It can be frustrating at times, but it's like if it's in your blood, you just do it. The other thing I always liked about watercolor is the fact that it's not messy. It dries, you can add a little bit of water to the paints, and you're good to go again. You can set it aside for a while, and you can come back to it. You're not dealing with a lot of smelly linseed oils or all this other chemicals and everything. It's just very easy for anybody to set up like a work area and to start to paint. Now, before you even go on to a next part, and if this is just the basic foundation, and generally that's got to dry before you end up putting anything else in there. So I'll work on one area, kind of let that dry and go to another area. So if I were to start to look at the head of this paper dragon, I'm kind of seeing like what is the lightest color on there that I would want to put down first and then kind of add to it. So what I see is a little bit of orangey yellow kind of a color, as you can see right in this whole area. So I think I'm going to start laying in some of that color in before I start adding any of the red. So I'm going to go to my orangey color. Going to start, and I'm looking at my reference. And one thing I've noticed when I've been teaching a lot of students is that they can have their reference out here, but they forget to look at it, and they're busy painting. But it's like I always have that for my reference. So I'm just going to come in here. I'm going to start laying in. I'm going to go around the eye. I'm just going to start laying in this lighter. And there's a little bit of white on there. There's all different colors in this dragon. And I can kind of let that kind of run in like that. There's a little bit of orange over on this side. And then there's some orange down here. Now in the classes I teach you, we work to about maybe 8.5 by 11 to 11 by 15 size tops. This would take a whole session to do a large painting like this. But if I ever get to the point where I have students that are getting ready to actually show in shows and get this advanced, then I would have them work on a full sheet of watercolor paper, which is 22 by 30, as a standard size for watercolor paper. So let's see, I'm just going to put it a little bit up here. Now I know how Bob Ross feels. It's like I'm doing a happy little dragon. Oh, God.
Didn't he have a lot of little mistakes or happy mistakes?
He did. He had happy mistakes, and he had happy trees and everything. Everything was happy. And actually, in these times where we're so stressed out with what's going on, it's kind of refreshing to turn on the Create station and see Bob Ross talks in his very calming tones. And you know what? It kind of calms you down. That's another thing about art, and I'd like to say, this is great therapy. This takes your mind off of everything. I can't, the many times in my life when it's come in handy, believe me. The red I'm using here is called Pyro Red. So I got it here. And this is by Daniel Smith. And he comes out with such an array of colors. And I try to collect them every so often. And so I get a nice selection. And of course, you know, like with everything, it's not cheap. But you can build up your amount of paints, your equipment over the years. You don't have to start out with the real good stuff. You can get student grade. But now that I feel I've gotten to this level, I deserve to treat myself to the good stuff now. Because I feel I've arrived now. So I'm just going to lay in this red all over the inside of his mouth. The store is no longer located where it is in New York City. They had to move out of this large building, which I was real unhappy to hear because it's just, oh my God, there's so much color and so much activity going on. They had to move because they raised the rent that it was actually located in downtown Broadway area. And they raised the rent so high that actually what's happening in New York, they're starting to take stores and artists' loss and everything out because they're building higher priced, real estate in that area, and they couldn't handle the amount of rent that was there. So I managed to get in there and I have this painting. So these are just, as you can see, when you start on watercolor, I'm just laying in the different areas, and they have to dry in between.